Hi, I'm Ryan Castle. Welcome to the Level 10 Leaders Podcast. We're going to be breaking down the systems, habits, and mindset shifts used by EOS leaders to crush their growth goals and achieve Level 10 success. If you're a visionary, integrator, or leader of a fast-growing team, this podcast is going to get you to 100% strong. Hit subscribe, stay tuned, and let's get started on the journey to learn, lead, and level up. Sarah, welcome along to the show. Great to have you as a guest today.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me here.
This has been a wonderful connection already. We've had some great discussion pre-show, but let's dive into a few fast fact questions so the audience gets to know you a little. Are you a breakfast or a dinner girl?
Oh, I think I'm more of a dinner, a lovely luxurious dinner. That sounds nice. Yeah.
I like that. I can picture the scene. It seems relaxing, sumptuous.
You may or may not be a small glass of wine attached to said dinner.
Oh,
yes.
Small. Oh, that sounds like a poor quantity. Let's move on. On holiday, would we find you doing something adventurous like bungee jumping, or would you be with a good book on the pool lounger?
I think I am more on the adventurous side. Adrenaline, coursing through my veins, preferred side of a holiday. Absolutely.
Okay. And do you immediately think about some adventurous moment you had on a holiday that comes to mind for you?
Oh, okay. So lots of our holidays are spent on ski slopes. So lots of skiing involved. I do have a little penchant for Disney parks as well. So all of the fast rides on the Disney parks, they're on repeat, right? So yes, just recently I was in the Hong Kong Disney park, bit slow for my liking, and then the Paris one as well, which had the best Space Mountain for all of those fans of Space Mountain. This one is in Paris.
Fabulous. Okay. Style-wise, would we more likely find you in some nice comfy trainers or heels?
Oh, I am a heels girl. I have way too many shoes in my wardrobe. According to many of my friends, there may be more than 200 pairs of shoes in my wardrobe. But yeah,
Would it be
love
okay if I
good
just
pair of
referred to
heels.
you as Imelda for the remainder of the podcast?
Many
Marcos?
people do. You wouldn't be the first.
Okay. Sounds like it's a name you've got already.
Yes.
Okay. Here's the biggie. Cats or dogs?
Oh, dogs all the way. I've had both. I adore my little dog, Coco. She's a Shih Tzu Maltese, heavy influence on the shit, but yeah, she's a delight.
Wonderful. Good to hear. And routine-wise, are you an early riser or a night owl?
Far more of an early riser. I love the quiet that occurs in the morning. You know, those very still hours of the morning, they are just brilliant for idea creation, reflection, those sorts of things. Yeah.
Indeed. Before the rest of the world wakes up and before the chaos begins?
Correct.
Thinking
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were choosing a movie, what genre would you choose?
Oh, okay. I have to distinguish this. Is it a movie on a plane or a movie I'm going to see at a theatre?
Let's go plane.
Okay. Plane is any movie that my husband doesn't want to watch. I watch it on the airplane, right? So I get a lot of those dull as rom-com kind of movies out of the way. All the movies that people are saying, oh, I've never seen that movie. I've probably seen it because I've watched it on a plane. Yeah.
Feel like it's a good way to divide and conquer, keep the relationship intact. Everybody's happy.
Correct, right? He would never sit through most of those movies. There's the
Love
odd
it.
one that I bring home and say, this was so good, you have to watch it with me a second time. Like, but they're few and far between, I have to say.
Rare occasions, rare occasions.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for sharing that, Sarah. I'd like to learn a little more about your journey because it's been a pretty interesting one. You started as an accountant and now you lead an organization called Leading Culture. Those two things don't seem to immediately go together. Can you talk us through the journey of how you went from accountant to this role?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, you can't take the numbers out of the girl, right? I still love accounting. But picture this, it's about 20 years ago, and I am working in a manufacturing organization, pretty decent sized one, and I'm loving it. I'm a management accountant. My role within the organization is to provide numbers and make sense of some of the decisions that the leadership team is faced with. So I'm giving them numbers and context to help them make decisions. And it's an amazing role. It's very forward focused. And there's lots of incredible opportunities here. one of the opportunities I was given was, Sarah, could you lead and I'm showing my age a little bit, the total quality management project that we'd like to implement across the whole factory? And, I was, still am, I suppose, up for anything. So I was like, that sounds like fun. I'll definitely do that. So my role in this project was to lead the teams through it, so help them implement the concepts of total quality management, but most importantly, to quantify the savings that they were making on this journey. So then we could report back to the board and say, look what we did. This is amazing. So there I am. Imagine me, probably a clipboard, possibly a calculator, out there in the factory with the manufacturing teams, and we're working through all sorts of improvements that they've come up with. And prior to that moment, Ryan, I was very famous for saying, just give me a balance sheet and a profit and loss, and I'll tell you what's wrong with this business, right? It was my absolute naivety. But throughout this project, working with every single member of the organization, every single team, helping them to improve. And it was things like, I don't know whether you've had any exposure to TQM, lean, that sort of thing, but it was things like, if we just move the machine, 1 meter to the left, we're going to save so many seconds in movement and, reducing some of that waste, right? And so throughout that project, I realized that I had this whole thing totally wrong. It wasn't the numbers that were driving a business at all. It was the people within it. And I often say to people, I had this moment. It was a real epiphany. And I can tell you exactly where I was standing. I was in the syrup factory. So I was with all the people making the famous tins of Chelsea golden syrup. And I was standing there and I was just like, I have this completely wrong. And from that moment, I realized it was all about the people. And if I really wanted to make the kind of contribution that I wanted to make to the world, sitting in an accountant's office somewhere in the back of an organization or something wasn't going to do it. And so it really did. It unraveled me, I think, for a wee while. And I had to really pull myself into, okay, well, what is this going to look like? And fortunately for me, the pathway through was consulting. It was the way in which I could, a lot of people were still coming to me, even though I was working in a career, people were coming to me for advice around their own, small businesses and stuff. And so I moved into that field. But what I ended up doing is tempering it all with the people side of the business. And where I ended up falling was a point that I felt had the most leverage, which was organizational culture. So that was the piece that really kind of triggered basically the last 20 years worth of my work.
Fascinating journey, Sarah. And I'm really interested to dig in. When you say I realized that was the people, what was it about people? Was it that they were required to come up with the improvement ideas? Was it the way in which they could bring something to life that was, used to be a decimal point on a piece of paper and now they were doing something about it? What was it about people that kind of really drove that epiphany?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this at the risk of just totally ruining my own personal brand because, like I did used to look at numbers, dollars and cents and numbers on a page and think that was a business, right? And and because that was my entire world, literally sitting in front of, computers and spreadsheets and numbers, and it never, this sounds terrible to say out loud, but it never really made me realize that there was a person connected to driving that number, whether it be a cost or a revenue item, right? And I was so disassociated from it. And so when I was working with all of the teams across the organization, like obviously getting to know them for the first time in, many years that I'd been working at this organization, that was embarrassing. But realizing just how much untapped potential there was within all of these people and just wanting to literally just push the balance sheets and the profit and loss to one side and say, no, let's just lean in on this because this is really important. And it did. It started a big journey for me, helping the organization at the time with the culture, helping the leaders to kind of bring out more out of their people as well, and just helping them to see what I'd seen as well. which I think was it was a massive turning point for the organization.
Sarah, so you don't feel lonely around damaging your personal brand, I'll do a quick share of a similar
Oh,
story.
good. Yeah.
I'd done operations management at university, was fully into the whole lean movement and what could be achieved, and super excited by it. Just absolutely loved it. Loved it so much I stayed and did like postgrad at university around it. Managed to land my first job at Yates, which was the garden seed company, among other
Yep.
things, and started a initiative in the warehouse to improve efficiency in the warehouse. And now I'm like 4 years of university, think I know everything. This is going to be great. I've come in, I've got all these amazing ideas. Didn't really talk to anyone in the organization, just like, oh, here's what I learned from the textbook. We should apply all this. Long story short, ended up somewhat down the track having a conversation with the forklift driver in the warehouse and said to him, hey, how do you think we could improve what we do around here? He had like 100 incredibly good ideas that we could execute straight away. I was like, oh, maybe I should have come and talked to you first. So back to the people, right? And amazing what they'll share and have insight around if you give them the space to share it.
Yeah, I think it's a humbling moment, isn't it, Ryan, when you realize, oh, I didn't even think to ask. But I'd like to say, thank goodness both of us had that early on in our careers because we wouldn't be where we are now.
Totally agree. And we talk a lot in our leadership training about developing awareness. And that's the awareness, what's really going on here, who can really help, who can provide insight. And you have to build some skill and capability to learn awareness. So it's a good skill to have. Hey, Sarah, that's really interesting. We love to try and pick out some sweet spots in our guests. You've had am I allowed to say long and distinguished career? Substantial career. How about we run with that? Substantial career. And I'm sure you've learned a lot, but I have asked you to pick out 3 things that are both topical and insightful for you around leadership. Could you share those with us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there is 4 systems that you need to have in order to really ensure that your multi-generational culture is both aligned and motivated. I think that a lot of companies, when I talk about leverage in organizations and cultures, a lot of companies are not tapping into that internal motivation that they could be, and they're losing out as a result of it.
Look forward to exploring that one some more.
Yeah. And I also think that there is, and we've kind of alluded to this in the story as we've led into it. There's a lot of growth techniques that are absolutely latent. They're laying latent within the business. And a lot of businesses aren't tapping into that. And like you just said in your story, Ryan, 100 things that could be implemented straight away. And they're everywhere, aren't they? And, we really need to be investigators of our own businesses to be able to find those. But you will talk a bit about that. And then I have to say, and I'm pretty sure everybody else is in the same boat, but I have dove deeply into the rabbit hole of AI. And I am very interested about talking about how that applies in business, where that applies in business, and also how people are wrangling with some of the challenges and issues that are coming up around it.
Yeah, trying to maybe compress those into the length of our show could be a challenge, but we'll give it a crack.
Correct.
See how we go. Let's come back
Absolutely.
to the 4 systems we need for multi-generational culture. A few things to unpick there. Maybe could you lead us off first with what do you mean by the term multi-generational?
Yeah, so you and I had a conversation about this earlier. As new generations come into the workforce, I think we're at a time in our human history, if you like. There's never been so many different generations in the workforce. So at the moment, in this moment of time, we have baby boomers who are looking to potentially exit businesses. We have got the millennials that came after the Gen Xers that came after the baby boomers. Then we've got the millennials, and now we've got Gen Zs as well in workforces. So we've got 4 different generations, all with 4 very different sets of needs, beliefs, behaviors that go with that. So we're grappling with that. And I know leaders are grappling with that. And so, what do we do with that? And what I've seen in organizations, and I'm going to preface this as well by saying I have two daughters. They're in their 20s now. They're Gen Zs. And I think for all of you who are out there who have children, look at your children because they are often really great teachers in this space of us understanding how we need to work with perhaps a workforce that's going to come into our business in the future, or maybe they're already in it now. I've just got the good fortune of it being that my daughters are already, entering the workforce. And so one thing that I noticed really early on with particularly my daughters and certainly within the workforce as well was the fact that all the buzzwords and the pieces that we'd had in the past, they just didn't land. They do not land with these new generations at all. I think what they're looking for more than anything is authenticity. And I don't know whether this is your experience, Ryan, and certainly whether it's the experience of some of your listeners as well, but it's almost like they've got this inbuilt radar on this authenticity piece. And if leaders aren't being truly authentic, they will. I mean, I've watched my daughter go to a interview for a job, and it was a job she really wanted. She met with one of the leaders, and she walked out of that and said, "Oh no, I told them no." And I said, "Why? You loved this job." "I couldn't work for that person." I said, "Why? Like what?" She said, "Oh, she was telling me stuff and trying to impress me with stats and stuff like that. And I'm not interested in working for an organization like that." And it was just so different to if I had contrasted that to, say, my experience interviewing,
Absolutely. The dynamic has shifted, right? It felt like certainly when I was applying for my first jobs out of university, it was very much a boss employee kind of environment in the interview. I was there to impress them. They weren't there to try and sell me on working for the organization. And the dynamic was wildly different. Here, it feels like that dynamic has rightly so shifted to we are both interviewing each other. This is not a one-way conversation now. This is like I'm determining as the potential employee whether you're an organization I'd like to work for, and you're trying to figure out whether I'm an employee you'd like to have. It's a
Yes,
very different
I
dynamic.
totally agree. And I think the other thing that's quite interesting is I think from previous generations, there was this real desire and need to get job security. And I really needed this job. I really need this. That's not present in the current generations. They're, "I'll take this job if I really like it, if it's a great fit for me. Otherwise, I'll find another one or I'll do something else."
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that's really interesting.
So, Sarah, you mentioned the four systems that we need to ensure this works across all those generations.
Yeah.
Of course, we'd much prefer there was just one magic system that we could just turn on and it would fix them all. But can you lead us through the four different systems?
Yeah. Okay, four systems. And when I say systems, I want you to think of these in terms of how can I embed these as systems into my organization. One of the key pieces of work that I do with organizational cultures is not only do I help organizations to identify what their culture is and help them to identify what they want it to be, but then we actually embed practices into their business. So then it's embedded in the systems. And that is the secret ingredient as to how you will maintain a culture. So here's the four culture systems that I think every business needs, especially as we're working multi-generationally. The first one is around clarity. And by clarity, I mean clarity of direction, clarity of purpose. How are you making sure that your people, A, know exactly where you and your business are heading, know exactly what their role is in that journey, and also know what your business stands for and what it won't stand for? So, oftentimes we talk about values in an organization. That's what a business will stand for and also what it won't stand for. It sends a really clear message to the external stakeholders, but also internal stakeholders. What I will say here, though, Ryan, is it's not okay just to put posters on a wall and say these are our values. We've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't
Comes back
work.
to the
I
authenticity
walk into
piece, doesn't it?
exactly right. So, and and make it an opportunity for you and your organization to say, what does this mean to us? This word, whatever this word is, or maybe it's a couple of words for values. This word, what does it really mean to us as an organization? And what is it that is going to translate into in terms of how we behave and how we show up here? So that's the first one, clarity. Second one, decision making, systems around decision making. Unfortunately, I see decisions made in isolation a lot, and around the leadership table, around the boardroom table. And there's a lot more opportunity here for, again, some authenticity and some transparency. And I'm not saying that you have to always have decision making as, yes, we're going to take your idea forward, for example. Decision making can also be, we're not taking your idea forward, and here's the reasons why. So then you're giving that person or that team of people an opportunity to improve how they approach you with their next idea. Oh, okay, they're not really looking for development in that area or new product range, for example. Let's redivert our idea generation into process improvement, for example. Right. So decision making, really important one. And I can't tell you how important that is from a culture perspective, because that is often the piece where you hear people say, I don't know what's going on around here. I wasn't informed. I wasn't told about that. And it just creates so many issues within an organization's culture.
So those first two
So that's
systems are very closely linked, aren't they, with the
very
clarity and the decision making. If you've got very strong clarity around the organization about where we're focused, what we're trying to achieve, who we're doing it for, how we intend to show up and do it, it makes that next step of the decision making much more aligned to
exactly.
follow. Yeah,
And so that can also be the first litmus test for a leadership team is how clear is our decision making as a team around this table? How clear are we? How united are we in decisions? Because if it's not clear around that table, chances are it's not going to be clear throughout the rest of the organization.
for
So,
sure.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, third system, recognition. Here's the doozy, right? I'm going to exploit a myth here because a lot of people say to me now, isn't it that we've grown these generations of people who just want to be recognized for just showing up? You know, those certificates of, what were they called? Certificates of,
Participate.
yes, participation. That's it. Certificates of participation. Isn't that what we're handing out now in business as well? And I think if that's the case, then you've missed the point. The idea about recognition, and again, it goes back to those needs of these new generations that are coming through, is, like, I want you to see me for me. I want you to recognize me for something that's unique and brilliant about me. Even if it is, gosh, I love that pair of shoes you've got on today. Like, right? That they are amazing. That is a great piece of recognition. So for leaders, it's important that recognition is authentic. It's not just I'm giving you the effective certificate of participation. So it's authentic, but it's also unique to the individual that they're recognizing or the team, right? If it's a team of people that they're recognizing. So how are we building those recognition systems into our business, into our systems and into our practices? And there's so many ways that you can get creative with that. I will also say that be aware of how people like to be recognized as well. So I
Mhm.
know this is getting like, oh wow, recognition's just become a really big, hard thing to do. But for example, some people don't want to be pulled to the front of the room at an all hands meeting and recognized in front of everybody. They would rather have you just, like pat them on the back, or if you're the CEO of the company, phoning them and letting them know that you heard what a great job they did and you just want to say thanks for that. Those sorts of things go a really long way. And just knowing how people like to be recognized, it can end up turning on its head if we don't consider how people like to be recognized. And we have that. I don't know. I see that a lot in organizations. Do you see this, Ryan, where people get, like, say, certificates, for example, in larger organizations, then they have the photo with everyone standing there with the certificates. And I'm just like, here's adults that we've made to feel like they're in a school classroom again,
Uh-huh.
or at the
Yeah,
school
totally.
assembly.
Yeah.
So yeah, think about how are you recognizing people, and is it in the manner in which they want to be recognized, and is it authentic and unique to them?
Do
Okay,
you
the
mean we should
fourth
treat
one,
people like humans, not like
oh yeah,
numbers?
that isn't that a unique concept?
Wow.
I
Yeah,
know,
maybe I should. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't recognize everyone on my team in exactly the same way with exactly the same situation. Maybe I should
exactly.
try and get to know them as a human a little bit, understand their style, what works for them. Yeah, interesting concept.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're listening to this going, "Oh, wow, I have been doing that. I've just recognized everybody in some sweeping statement. Thanks, team. That was a great job." It's okay. You know now that that's probably not the best way, and you can make like a little tiny improvement to it for the next time you want to recognize somebody. A lot of leaders, and you probably share this with your customers as well, Ryan, is like catching people doing something good, just catching them doing something great and mentioning it. So that can be a great way of doing it. Okay,
Yeah.
fourth system is belonging. So I always say to people, when it comes to culture, there's two things that you really need to get right, and it will get you 70% of the way. And that is having every person in your organization feel like I matter and I belong. If you get those two things right with your people, then you're likely to be 70+% of the way um, to having them show up as their best self, having them contribute as meaningfully as they possibly can, and having them as a really valued member, high performing member of your team. So when we think about belonging, how are we allowing people to belong in our business? How are we making them feel like they belong? And this is where some of the minority group conversations start to enter the scene. How are we making sure that if people feel like they're a minority, they don't feel like that's the case when they're at work, that they do feel like part of the larger team? How are we being as inclusive as we possibly can? And how are we really understanding what that looks like in our business? Are you aware of minority groups within your business, and how is the team handling those? Are we inadvertently creating minority groups within our business? For example, I was just working with an organization over the past couple of weeks, and there's a really distinct divide between a small team that works out in the warehouse compared to the rest of the business. It's almost like the warehouse has now, because they have to walk through a door to get there, has become this separate part of the business. And they've created their own little subculture as a result, because that's the coping mechanism to help them feel like they still belong. But when you start to bring them into the larger organization, literally walking through that one door from the warehouse into the office, for example, now they don't feel like they belong. They feel like they are outsiders. And the examples they gave me of, everyone stops talking when we walk in the door, turned out to be completely untrue, but it was true for them. Does that make sense? It's
Of
totally
course.
true for them, and that was their lived experience. That when they walked in the door, all the conversations stopped because they weren't meant to be part of those conversations. So it's just a small example.
And I love the example, Sarah. Can you extend it a little for us? How did you suggest that was addressed or improved?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, And funnily enough, oftentimes it comes down to communication. Unfortunately, what we discovered is that the communication stopped at the door. So that was the system that was leading them down there, right? And it was an innocent mistake, because it was, oh, the people in the warehouse are really busy. They're under the pump at the moment. We probably don't want to bother them with some of these wider organizational things when they should just be focused on what they're doing. But what that ended up translating to for them was, we don't know the direction of the company. We don't know what's going on. Everybody else seems to know, and we've been left out once again. Yeah.
Loss of clarity. System one wasn't working.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Yeah.
Quick break. If you're serious about scaling your EOS business, listen up. Here's the truth. Most companies stall because their managers can't lead. We built a system to fix it. At Level 10 Leaders, we turn managers into leaders so you can step back, scale up, or sell with confidence. Here's a quick win. Take 3 minutes to get a data-driven report of your team's LMA, leadership, management, and accountability strength. Uncover your biggest growth gaps. Take the LMA quiz now at lvl10.us/LMA. It's fast and I'll show you exactly where your team is getting stuck. Let's get back into the podcast. I've got an interesting question for you, Sarah. We talked about dynamic shifts through the generations. And if we were to maybe paraphrase some early observations of work culture, I could probably paraphrase it with a boss saying, "You're just really lucky that you've got a job," right? So that kind of sentiment. And then I think over time we've seen this real shift where the dynamics have changed, and maybe right now down the other end of the continuum, there's employees going, "What are you going to do to keep me happy?" Very much putting the onus on the organization. How do we bring it to the middle where it's a shared responsibility to create great outcomes for the organization, for the culture, for us as individuals, for teams, rather than it being somebody else's job to kind of sort that thing out?
Yeah. And this is such a great question because yes, it comes up an awful lot, doesn't it? And again, I am going to say for all of you who have had children or have children, this is your greatest practice zone, quite honestly, because you're grappling with this all the time. My position on this is that you need to open a pathway that helps that person to take back their own power and their own responsibility. So by that, I mean, when somebody is coming to you saying, "How are you going to keep me and how are you going to, make sure that my life is good while I'm working here," right? They're giving away their power in that moment. They're totally giving away their power. And one of the things that I do know about these, that Gen Zs, they don't have the same, let's call it outward drive, visible drive, as some of the prior generations, because they don't have the same underlying beliefs as some of the prior generations, right? If you think of, let's go all the way back to baby boomers, right? Baby boomers, their drive was, we're coming out of a post-war situation, almost a depression type situation. We need to do everything we can to make sure that we are financially secure. Contrast that now with Gen Zs and that sort of stuff. Most Gen Zs that are coming into the workforce have had most of the, their security in terms of, and this is gross generalization. I realize there's
Sure.
there's people outside of this, but for the vast majority of people coming into the workforce, they've never known a situation where financial security has been an evident thing. In their world, and again, gross generalization, I apologize for this, but in their world, not having something is like not having the latest phone release in many of their worlds, right? My parents wouldn't buy me the latest phone when it came out, and that's the position they take. However, what we need to do is we need to help them rebalance where the power is and where they can hold their own power. And so sometimes that is about showing them the pathways that allow them to take back their own power and create what they're looking for. And I'll tell you one of the ways, it sounds a bit woo-woo, but one of the ways that is really helpful is to get them to do more visioning type exercises. What is it that you're looking for in your life? Because I think in a lot of cases, they haven't really considered that too much, and certainly in their work life. And so getting them to vision, what is it that they want to do? And I'll tell you a funny thing about this. Sometimes you'll get the answer of, "Well, I'd like to be the CEO of the organization by next year. Like, I'd like your job, please, by next year." Because I've heard it comes with a pretty good paycheck. The great thing about something like that is, yeah, you've got to have your best poker face on for if you ever hear something like that, best poker face. But the great thing is, well, now we've got something to work with. Well, that's awesome. I love that you've got great ambition here. Here's the pathway that we're going to need to start going down in order to get you there. Now, one distinction about this is you need to be, again, back to our clarity system, really clear on what the milestone looks like when they've achieved it. So it's not okay to say, well, you're going to need to have much better, let's say, relationships with people. Like, what does a much better relationship with a person look like? How will I know that? So you've got to be really descriptive and say, okay, so we're going to put you on a performance plan or a development plan, whatever you want to call it. And here's what this looks like. Here's the milestones. We'll check in at this time. And if you're doing this, 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 and this, we can say yes and move on from there, right?
At the center, it does still come back to clarity and communication. So if we were to take one of the systems like recognition, we might say to name a generation, a Gen Zer, how is it that you would like to be recognized? Great.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a flip side to that conversation, which is like, and what do you think the organization or me as your leader or manager might find would be worthy of recognition? Yeah. So it's a two-way communication, and so communication and clarity, I think, is at the center of kind of everything we're discussing. But I liked your example there, Sarah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think just, reminding them that they have a say in this. It's all too easy for leaders to go, oh, they just want it all handed to them on a silver platter. I don't actually think that that is the truth of the matter. I think actually it's far deeper than that. And it's that they don't feel like, or they haven't been given the life skills to go, actually, I can drive myself directly towards that. And because we came from generations that either had parents that had those skills or we had them ourselves, we think everybody else has them.
Absolutely. And if people want to do a deep dive on this, Deloitte recently released a really interesting study into Gen Z and millennials and what they're looking for in the workplace now. And they were very clear that these generations don't lack drive and ambition. It just shows up in different ways. And again, the belief systems you've talked about are different. They're no longer, to quote a small element, seeking the corner office. That's not what excites them. It does come back to those things you talked about, like purpose. Am I getting growth and development here? Am I around people that I trust and I feel trust from them? So yeah, as many of the things that you've talked about and highlighted here, research number was like 36,000 people that they surveyed and took around this. So yeah, if people want to deep dive on that, take a look at that. I recently posted about it on my LinkedIn, so if you can't find it, have a look for it there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll
Sarah,
definitely check
let's
out that.
move to growth techniques. So where are these latent opportunities sitting in our businesses?
I mean, there is so many, isn't there? Just a crazy amount. So one of the main things around growth techniques is I talk about it in my business as growth from the inside out. It's way more sustainable and it's way more profitable. And so if we hark back to both Ryan and my's upbringing, if you like, looking at where improvements can be gathered, I think I created a belief system for myself around this is that, well, of course, every organization would be doing this, but it still surprises me how many organizations I go into that have either bred that out of their organization or never had it in the first place of asking, where can we improve? For example, there's meetings going on in, the boardroom and they're designing the customer experience, the customer journey, the user experience. And it's a group of, let's say it's a marketing team that's doing that. And there's nobody within that room that actually is client facing, customer facing, has any interaction with the customer. Now, I'm not saying they can't get information and gather data that will give them meaningful decisions, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm saying they've missed an opportunity by actually going and asking people. So you're probably familiar with the saying, Ryan, go to Gemba, which means go to the shop floor, go to where the work is happening. And I say this all the time, go to Gemba, go and see what's going on because that's where the true insights will come. So that is the first one, like looking at what we can already improve within our organization. And it just blows my mind that organizations are missing this critical thing of simply saying to people, how can we improve around here? What are you seeing that we're not, that we could be doing to improve? Now, you'll get a massive list of ideas and you'll have to create a system to be able to filter through which ones are going to get, for example, investment if that's required, which ones are going to get, resources as in the time allocation, people allocation, that sort of thing. But yeah, that is just a critical piece. And this is where the culture really can support that, right? So if you have what I like to call a culture of curiosity, I think that is a culture that instills in your organization people just generally being curious, asking the question, not even out loud, but within their own head of, is there a better way that we could be doing this? Is there a faster, cheaper, more effective, more productive, better customer experience way that we could be doing this thing, right? So having that curiosity within the organization is incredibly important.
I saw a great example,
Then,
actually. I think we'll just go kind
yeah,
of like off here for a sec. I think we're getting some internet lag. I'm pretty sure it's at your end because I've just done a speed test at my end and it's super, super quick. What are you seeing? If you go
that is
to
bizarre.
fast.com,
And I'll fix my lighting as well. 6.4 meg.
yeah, it's
It's
terrible.
all over
It's
the
like
place.
Western dial-up.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. It's
Seriously.
why,
And I'm
yeah,
I'm not
it's
even on the Wi-Fi.
something's
That's
not happy at
bizarre.
your end of the internet. Do you want to try doing like a modem restart and coming back into the meeting?
Let me just.
Start recording. And Sarah, can you tell us where does culture fit in all of these kind of growth techniques that you've been talking about?
Yeah, so I think of culture as the operating system upon which, let's say, growth is created. Um, Unfortunately, across my career, I've seen cultures that have completely supported growth. That's the positive side. But I've also seen cultures that have completely destroyed growth. Growth has been cannibalized by the culture in many situations. And I'll tell you why, well, the commonality to why it's been cannibalized is that fundamentally underneath it all, the culture has not been set up to be that culture of curiosity that I spoke about, and therefore one that embraces change. So the minute a change comes along, people have two choices. They say, I'm not about this change, so I'm either going to leave the organization or I'm actively going to sabotage the change, which happens a lot, or I'm going to sit this one out if I don't like this change. I'll just be the cruiser in the background, just not going into change. Now, when we're in organizations as we are, the current economy, and I think the economy for the future of businesses, is this environment of constant change. The economies, industries, the pace of change has picked up exponentially. And so change is not going away. It's actually going to be more of a daily occurrence than anything else. And so the culture needs to be there to support it and be the operating system within which we can embrace change and, work with it. I've got a client who they were already in a fast moving industry, but they went from changes that would take 3, 6, 9 months to embed to now being able to completely embed a change within 2 weeks in their
Wow.
organization. Yeah, phenomenal. So that's the kind of pace that you're up against in some other organizations that they've been able to develop. And you need to be thinking about how that can happen in your organization as well. Yeah.
Indeed. Oh, well, this is a lovely segue into something that's changing very, very, very quickly, and that is the world of AI. I think OpenAI had the fastest adoption rate of any software platform in the world by a factor of a gazillion. We're seeing new releases, new use cases, new concerns literally every single week. with that as a broad topic, Sarah, what's top of mind for you when you're thinking about AI, both for your own business and for the clients that you're working with?
Yeah. I guess I'm in the thick of the grappling with what does this mean for businesses in terms of is this going to be I'm going to replace all my people with AI agents? So um like I'm deep into the agentic AI rabbit hole at the moment, very deep. Um and there's some incredible possibilities that can come from that. And the reframe that I am sitting with and I'm working through with my clients as well is this is not about using AI as a way of replacing people. This is about using AI as a way of getting those tasks that could be done by AI to be done by AI and allowing space and room for those true growth opportunities. All those things that we say, oh, I'd love to do that, but we just don't have time to do it. There's no resource in our business to do it. That is going to be a line of the past, I think, where we redivert the things, the daily activities, those sorts of things that we can divert to AI. And we allow our team now space for working on those growth initiatives, the new ways that we can, delight customers, grow businesses, increase product ranges, like all of the pieces that we want to do within our business will now become available because we're diverting resources to AI, and treating them as like a staff member. I think we're still seeing, I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, but I'm seeing like all the range, the full range of adoption from no, I'm ignoring it because it's going to go away soon, through to, yeah, like I've really heard that. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I know, I know. I'm like, are
Yeah.
you
Did
sure
they
about
realize the wheel
that?
had also been invented recently?
Yeah, yeah. And then all the way through to move over, we're going to turn everything into AI. So I'm seeing this really interesting space of interest, but also adoption as well. And the people that I think are like using AI further ahead are the ones that have already realized that it's all about how you're prompting AI, how you're training the LLMs, those sorts of things, and not about using it as a substitution for our brain, but actually using it as a way of perhaps drawing out tacit knowledge. I think is it's one of the most powerful uses I'm seeing of, say, ChatGPT at the moment. If you ask ChatGPT questions that allow ChatGPT, sorry, if you prompt ChatGPT with, hey, can you interview me, say, on this topic? The tacit knowledge that will end up being drawn out of you is so invaluable. It's amazing. And I'm using it as a real hack in my business at the moment. So then my team has access to some of the stuff that I back to the clarity system, right? Some of the stuff that I inherently just keep in my head and think that everybody knows about, I'm now using ChatGPT to prompt me. And there's a little hack that you can do. You just sit yourself in front of your microphone like I am. You can record it on Zoom, but you get ChatGPT to ask you questions. You act like it's an interview. You just record the answers. It transcribes everything. And then you say, now can you create summary, report, whatever the output is that you're looking for, right? Totally different to the approach of saying to ChatGPT, can you tell me what my business is all about, for example? Or, like, yeah, the two contrasts. And that's just a really simple hack that people can use for if they're using ChatGPT. Um, of course, there's custom GPTs now. We're all in the world of AI agents, and like where that's going to head is really exciting and interesting. And yeah, there's just a huge amount going on in the space at the moment.
Do you see a time, Sarah, where we'll be able to, rather than having you physically fly across the world to be present with us and help us lead our culture change, that we'll be able to have a avatar of you that has in its knowledge base all your experience and all your knowledge, and that avatar will be able to lead us through a program of culture improvement without you having to physically be in the room?
Yeah, yeah. So we're already working on some AI agents to take pieces of the process that we do with organizations, and literally people will interact with that agent to be able to instigate their own culture transformation program, right? Um, and so we're working on that. And then there's a concept called stacking of AI agents. So that the concept is basically that one AI agent does this job, passes it to the next AI agent. Yeah, yeah. I heard a really cool thing. Somebody created a project manager to make sure that all the AI agents did their job as well. And I was like, that's fun.
Indeed. And
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was really, really good. I was like, that's a really good quality control. I love that. Um, but yeah, so we're working with that. So then that can be a tool that may be, showing up on our website in the not too distant future, like those sorts of things that organizations will be able to have access to and be able to develop it. So yeah, long story long, yes, I totally see that that will be the case. And, I like to think of myself as quite a progressive thinker. I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of what is possible here. Um, and I don't know about you, Ryan, but I actually feel my brain clunking over it, like it's not often that I feel like my brain gets a bit clunky, but it really is over this. I'm like, oh, there's so many possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, I think possibility and opportunity is definitely the same feeling we observe. I mean, we are using it a lot in our organization, but genuinely have the feel that we're using 0.0000001% of what's possible for us, and that's both exciting and daunting when you think about what can be done. And then I think trying to balance the humanness of AI, because as humans, as much as we like AI to go and do repetitive tasks that don't add a lot of value to our client experience or our team experience, let's not lose sight of the fact that as humans, we still like connection, we still like interacting with other humans. So it's never just about the knowledge of what could be shared, because we could also search that. It's also that human connection element. So encouraging organizations to think about that aspect of AI.
Yeah.
Um,
I think just quickly, that's one thing that I'm very conscious of when it comes to culture. A lot of the pieces that we do, particularly up front with our culture transformation, is we do a lot of observation of how are humans interacting with humans, right? That's going to be a hard piece to translate. I'm not saying it's impossible, but my brain has not quite wrapped its way around to that one yet. Yeah.
know and love that example, because you can walk into an organization and you can get a sense of the culture within 30 seconds. But that is not the same thing of asking everyone to fill out a survey on what they think of the culture. It's
Oh,
that human observation of what's the vibe, what are people's body languages, all that. And I'm sure at some point AI will be able to connect with a 3D laser and observe all those things and do a great job. But for right now, observing culture in the literally in the flesh is still the most powerful way to get there. Okay.
yeah, for sure.
Hey, Sarah, I'm curious. What's your take on the concerns around AI, it taking over the world, making humans redundant? There's not going to be jobs for our children anymore. Where do you kind of sit on that continuum of concern versus caution versus it's all good, let's go for it?
Yeah. So the jury's certainly not out in my world on this one. Um, I have concerns. I have a lot of concerns. I had a colleague who was just at a AI conference just last week in Geneva. She was messaging me about how they're talking about direct brain interface with AI, like hooking people's brains up. That concerns me a lot. Um, and where this can head, and the fact that there's not yet a lot of legislation in any regard around the world, and that countries in general are reluctant to put any legislation in place, because that will put them behind in their view. So there's a real race going on, and so it's a free for all at the moment. So that's concerning. I think, there's organizations are very concerned about their IP and their data. And there's certainly clear ways that you can ring fence that. So like, I suppose make sure that you understand what is happening there, and then make sure that you are protecting your data, and your IP. And like, will it take over the world? I think, what I said before is where I really lean into, and maybe this is Pollyanna of me, but it's this shift that we've seen happen many, many times in many, many industries. As like you think of what the shift was in agriculture when they brought farm machinery onto the land instead of people doing everything manually. I mean, that's a huge shift. And there was a lot of uproar about how many jobs would be lost over this. Humans survived through that period and continued to thrive and probably have a better quality of life as a result of it. And I think we're going through another one of those transitions now. The same when everything became, digitized, and so many potential jobs were lost as a result of that. But people develop new skills and move into new areas. So it's a growth opportunity, or I like to see it as a growth opportunity for the human race. And I think back to what I said before as well, now we can start to divert our attention to the things that are uniquely human, that only humans can do. And as a result, I think that we will see, the quality of our relationships improve, the quality of the service that we receive improve, like all of those genuine human things. Imagine if we now had 50%, even on a conservative scale, 50% more time to divert to getting great at those things. Imagine what the world would be like. And I think that's what I like to think AI is going to do for us.
Yeah. Imagine just the joy of being able to interact with a bank and not have to tell 7 different people in the same organization my personal details, my account number, what I've got. I'm like, you have all this information on me already. Surely you can harness that to give me a better customer experience.
Exactly.
So let's not go down the rabbit hole of banks. It might take us a while because they serve a great need in our world, but man, some of their interactions can be frustrating. As a closing note, if you or our listeners haven't listened to Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO podcast, he interviewed Jeffrey Hinton, who's known as the godfather of AI. It was absolutely eye-opening for me in terms of where AI has come from, how it's evolving, and for someone who's been at the center of its development, some of the concerns that he has, but also some of the great opportunities that he observes in there as well. It's a really, really good listen. Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Some really great insights, right from talking about the 4 systems of working in multi-generational culture through to all these areas that we can grow our businesses, and then on to, of course, the hot topic of the moment, AI. It's been a really pleasurable chat, and thanks for being so open, being willing to destroy your personal brand on a podcast. We appreciate you doing that. It's been an absolute joy. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been an absolute delight for me as well. And yeah, I hope all your listeners get at least one pearl of wisdom that they can apply into their business and their culture from this podcast.
There are many pearls. I'm sure there's at least one or more that people can utilize. Such a good chat. I feel like we might have to line up a part 2 of this conversation in the near future. Thanks, Sarah.
I'd love that.
Disclaimer: Level 10 Leaders is an independent podcast and leadership development platform. It is not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by EOS Worldwide LLC. EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, Level 10 Meeting, and related trademarks are trademarks of EOS Worldwide and are used here for informational purposes only. Thanks for tuning in to Level 10 Leaders. If today's episode hit home, here's what you need to do. Take the LMA quiz. Go to lvl10.us/LMA. It's fast and reveals what's holding you back. Hit subscribe and share this with one person who needs to break through the ceiling and crush their growth goals. Stay tuned for the next episode where we'll show you exactly how to level up to level 10.